Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Shravanam Diaries Podcast.
Reading Bhagavad Gita as it is, the book by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, Text 37. Yathaidhamsi samidhognir bhasmasat kurute Arjuna jnanagni sarvakarmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities. Purport. Perfect knowledge of self and superself and of their relationship is compared herein to fire. This fire not only burns up all reactions to impious activities, but also all reactions to pious activities, turning them to ashes. There are many stages of reaction. Reaction in the making, reaction fructifying, reaction already achieved, and reaction a priori. But knowledge of the constitutional position of the living entity burns everything to ashes. When one is in complete knowledge, all reactions, both a priori and a post priori, are consumed. In the Vedas, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad 4.4.22, it is stated, Ubhe uhai vaisa ite taratyamrita sadva sadhuni. Quote, one overcomes both the pious and impious reactions of work. See, this is something that I feel that modern people, when they imagine that there is no evil or there is no impious reaction, there's no sinful reaction, they think that spirituality means all impious reactions are gone and there's only pious, there's only so-called material good, and they think that this is utopia. And some people, they have many theories about this, whether utopia is real, whether would it be weird if everything was good, everything was pious. But what people don't know yet is that actually spirituality and transcendence, it goes beyond the material dualities. Like it says here, this fire of knowledge, it burns impious and pious activities, because on the transcendental plane, where there is pure knowledge, bliss, and eternity, material goodness and material evilness, it's not there. Text 38. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tatsvayam yoga samsidha kalenatmani vindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. Sounds so wonderful. Enjoying this knowledge from within in due course of time. Purport. When we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. As such, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. ignorance is the cause of our bondage, and knowledge is the cause of our liberation. This knowledge is the mature fruit of devotional service. And when one is situated in transcendental knowledge, he need not search for peace elsewhere, for he enjoys peace within himself. In other words, this knowledge and peace culminate in Krishna consciousness. That is the last word in the Bhagavad Gita. Text 39. Shraddhavallabhate jnanam tatparasam yatendriya jnanam labdhva param shantim achirena adhigacchati. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. Purport: such knowledge in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by a faithful person who believes firmly in Krishna. One is called a faithful man who thinks that simply by acting in Krishna consciousness, he can attain the highest perfection. This faith is attained by the discharge of devotional service and by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which cleanses our heart of all material things, of all material dirt. Over and above this, one should control the senses. A person who is faithful to Krishna and who controls the senses can easily attain perfection in the knowledge of Krishna consciousness without delay. Text 40. Agyascha shradadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam lokosti na paro nasukham samshayatmana. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. This is something that we should really remember. That if we are practicing spirituality properly, if we're practicing devotional service properly, we are supposed to be happy now. Meaning, there's two characteristics which arise immediately after we begin devotional service, which is Kleshagni and Shubhada. Meaning, we become happy in this world. Not because, as soon as you start chanting your rounds and chanting japa and attending morning program in the temple, that you open your door and there's $1 million suitcase, or I don't know what people need for happiness, but because we are awakening our true spiritual nature, and we're in contact with Shri Krishna, and we're leading proper regulated life. All of this together, it creates actually a very, very happy life. The society runs, society of Vaishnavas is the best society you would ever want to be in. A real society of Vaishnavas. So we just happy in this world and in the next. It's not real spirituality if you lead the life of total utmost suffering in this life, and then you're just waiting for the heaven to fall upon you in the next life. Something must be wrong there, because that's not what acharyas describe, what real devotional service and spiritual life is. But for people who are doubting, who are faithless, they don't even have the concept of the next world, so basically, or next life. Basically, they're unhappy in this life and in the next. Yeah. Although some people, okay, we won't go over there. It will be brought up later on in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so it's a very important point that ignorant and faithless persons who doubt revealed scriptures, they fall down and they don't find happiness neither in this world nor in the next. It's a very, very important point. I remember when I just began communicating with my Guru Maharaj, I wrote to him the services that I'm doing, and he replied to me. He said that he assured me or inspired me to continue in my reading and chanting, and he said that, I quote, "You will grow spiritually and always be happy." And at one point, when I was a bit irregular in organizing my spiritual life and services, I remembered his words, and I was like, it inspired me to take a step and to make a change in my life at that time, because I knew that, if I'm overwhelmed, if I don't feel like I'm fitting in, and if I'm basically miserable, I can't manage things. It doesn't mean, sometimes we have this idea that, okay, I'm sacrificing myself for the greater good. I'm sacrificing myself for Krishna. I have like dark circles under my eyes. I haven't slept for 5 days. I'm sick. And I have to do all these things because it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make for my spiritual life for Krishna. Krishna will be happy. Not necessarily. Turns out not necessarily. Yeah. Actually, spiritual life is a really natural process, and it really, you don't drain or you don't exhaust this material body. You work within the limits of actually, this will be brought up later on. I will not elaborate on this, because later on it will be brought up that austerities that demons do is they torture themselves and the spirit soul within. So if you're not on the level of Paramahamsas or Goswamis who could sleep for like 1 or 2 hours a day, and they felt perfectly normal because actually they were above levels of like normal maintenance of the body. They would not eat, they would not sleep, they would be in ecstasy, in spiritual ecstasy. But if we do that, we just torture ourselves and the super soul within. Because Krishna is within our heart. He also feels something. So just like demons, they take austerities to torture themselves and the super soul within. And similarly, sometimes we think that spirituality involves that, but... Alright. Let's get to the purport. Out of many standard and authoritative revealed scriptures, the Bhagavad Gita is the best. Persons who are almost like animals have no faith in or knowledge of the standard revealed scriptures. And some, even though they have knowledge of or can cite passages from the revealed scriptures, have actually no faith in these words. And even though others may have faith in scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, they do not believe in or worship the personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna. Such persons cannot have any standing in Krishna consciousness. They fall down. Out of all the above mentioned persons, those who have no faith and are always doubtful make no progress at all. Wow, this is such a strong statement. One who have no faith and are always doubtful make no progress at all. Men without faith in God and His revealed word find no good in this world, nor in the next. For them there is no happiness whatsoever. One should therefore follow the principles of revealed scriptures with faith, and thereby be raised to the platform of knowledge. Only this knowledge will help one become promoted to the transcendental platform of spiritual understanding. In other words, doubtful persons have no status whatsoever in spiritual emancipation. One should therefore follow in the footsteps of great acharyas who are in the disciplic succession and thereby attain success. Okay. Yeah. This is very important. Doubts. I remember Bhaktivigyan Maharaj was giving a class somewhere like 5 years back. I heard it here in Mayapur, and he mentioned that I think Jiva Goswami, he classifies different categories of doubts in spiritual life, and there are categories of doubts which are cleared or they are reconciled or destroyed by revealed scriptures and sadhu sangha. There is a category of doubts which can be reconciled by realization in spiritual life, like we serve sincerely with our heart and there is like this revelation from within and the doubts are cleared. And there is a category of doubts which can only be cleared or reconciled when we meet Krishna face to face. Yeah, if I remember correctly. In my personal life, I found that I can say as a person who grew up in a devotional environment that I had no problem with doubting revealed scriptures, meaning really not trusting it or thinking that. I had no problem with that. But due to my, I would say, neophyte understanding, I remember I had quite a phase of misunderstanding of the Lord when I was making a mistake purely within material plane. And because I did not know philosophy, or even though I thought that I know philosophy in and out, at that time I was so arrogant. But now I know that I didn't even scratch the surface. But basically it's the same thing as, sometimes in our life we have a broken pipe in the kitchen sink and the water is all over the apartment. And we're like, why is this happening to me? And we're calling the carpenter. And the carpenter comes into our life and he's like, yeah, I'll fix it. But he can't fix it. And then we're thinking, Krishna, why are you doing this to me? Krishna, why is this happening to me? I'm chanting my rounds. I'm trying to study Bhagavad Gita. Why is this sink in my kitchen, it's not working? And the carpenter is like, well, I'm trying my best, but you're supposed to call the plumber and he's supposed to fix it. So similarly in our life, sometimes we make mistakes purely on the material plane, and we would not make them if we were a little bit more educated or experienced or less naive or whatever. And then we blame Krishna, right? Because he is the supreme controller. So like that, I find that such mistakes of misunderstanding philosophy, like we discussed previously, being the victim, saying that Krishna, he's somehow spoiling my life personally, he doesn't like me personally. That's why so many problems are happening, when we don't understand that we are responsible for our life, and we don't understand that basically ignorance is the cause. Ignorance. our previous sinful activities. Lack of good association, because faith comes from good association. So, yeah. Okay, I think I've talked too much in today's episode. Okay, Jai. This was a good reading. Oh, come on, we have 2 verses left. May as well. Text 41. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhananti dhananjaya. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus, he is not bound by the reactions of work. O conqueror of riches. This is what I mentioned before, that doubts are supposed to be destroyed. Purport. One who follows the instruction of the Bhagavad Gita as it is imparted by the Lord, the personality of Godhead himself, becomes free from all doubts by the grace of transcendental knowledge. He, as a part and parcel of the Lord, in full Krishna consciousness, is already established in self-knowledge. As such, he is undoubtedly above bondage to action. Jai. Text 42. Tasmadajnana sambhutam hritstham jnana sinatmana chitvainam samshayam yogam atishthotishta bharata. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. Oh, I should memorize this verse. 1 second, let me mark. This is such a beautiful verse. Armed with knowledge. Have you ever been armed with knowledge? Let's read this again, I'm sorry. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharat, stand and fight. Purport. The yoga system instructed in this chapter is called Sanatana Yoga, or eternal activities performed by the living entity. So we should be armed with Sanatana Yoga. This yoga has 2 divisions of sacrificial actions. One is called sacrifice of material possessions, sacrifice of one's material possessions, and the other is called knowledge of self, which is pure spiritual activity. If sacrifice of one's material possessions is not dovetailed for spiritual realization, then such sacrifice becomes material. But one who performs such sacrifices with a spiritual objective, or in devotional service, makes a perfect sacrifice. When we come to spiritual activities, we find that these are also divided into two, namely understanding of one's own self, or one's constitutional position, and the truth regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who follows the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is can very easily understand these 2 important divisions of spiritual knowledge. Okay, so what are the two important divisions of spiritual knowledge? First, understanding your own self, your own constitutional position. And the second is regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Has to be both. Okay. So one who follows the path of Bhagavad Gita, he can understand these two important divisions of spiritual knowledge. For him, there is no difficulty in obtaining perfect knowledge of the self as part and parcel of the Lord. And such an understanding is beneficial. For such a person can easily understand the transcendental activities of the Lord. In the beginning of this chapter, the transcendental activities of the Lord were discussed by the Supreme Lord Himself. One who does not understand the instructions of the Gita is faithless and is to be considered to be misusing the fragmental independence awarded to him by the Lord. In spite of such instructions, one who does not understand the real nature of the Lord as the eternal, blissful, all-knowing personality of Godhead is certainly fool number one. Ignorance can be removed by gradual acceptance of the principles of Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is awakened by different types of sacrifices to the demigods, sacrifice to Brahman, sacrifice in celibacy, in household life, in controlling the senses, in practicing mystic yoga, in penance, in foregoing material possessions, in studying the Vedas, and in partaking of the social institution called Varnashrama Dharma. All of these are known as sacrifice. And all of them are based on regulated action. But within these activities, the important factor is self-realization. One who seeks that objective is the real student of Bhagavad Gita. But one who doubts the authority of Krishna falls back. He falls back. One is therefore advised to study Bhagavad Gita or any other scripture under a bona fide spiritual master with service and surrender. A bona fide spiritual master is in the disciplic succession from time immemorial, from time eternal. And he does not deviate at all from the instructions of the Supreme Lord, as they were imparted millions of years ago to the Sun God, from whom the instructions of Bhagavad Gita have come down to the earthly kingdom. One should therefore follow the path of Bhagavad Gita as it is, expressed in the Gita itself. And beware of self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path. Sometimes, these self-interested people after personal aggrandizement who deviate others from the actual path, they don't have to be like this big evil person who is too obvious to notice. Sometimes even like you can meet such people and not even realize that they're not entirely pure yet, and they may not even do it consciously. I mean, I've been in this situation where basically you're deviated from the actual path, but it is done not because the other person really purposefully did that, but because the other person was not entirely informed himself, and he just wanted to take up that position of authority over you. And yeah, but then time shows that they were wrong, and then they themselves come to you and they apologize. So basically using your intelligence and staying on the path without deviation is always welcome. And as Prabhupada mentioned yesterday, we were reading, there is no blind following. Never. This is important. The Lord is definitely the Supreme Person, and His activities are transcendental. One who understands this is a liberated person from the very beginning of his study of the Bhagavad Gita. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 4th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of transcendental knowledge. Tomorrow we shall begin chapter 5, Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The book links, previous episodes timeline, and biography of the author can be found on shravanamdiaries.com. The link is in the description, and we shall see you tomorrow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.